I'm Stacey Roberts, 25, and my mom has always had a favorite, treating my younger sister like royalty while I was left to fend for myself. I saved up from late-night shifts as a remote programmer in Denver, grinding to build a comfortable life. Then my sister ran up $15,000 in reckless charges, and my mom showed up at my door insisting I bail her out. "Family sticks together," she snapped, sounding like it was my obligation to rescue them again. I refused outright, saying I'd earned that money the hard way and wasn't handing it over. Her face contorted with rage, and she stomped away, slamming the door behind her. That night, while I slept, she came back with the spare key I'd forgotten to retrieve. The next morning, my phone buzzed with bank alerts. My credit card drained, my savings gone, payments made for my sister's mess. I stared at the screen, heart racing, and stayed quiet. No calls, no confrontation, just a plan for my next move. What followed exposed their scheme, flipped the script, and left them dealing with consequences they never expected. If you've ever felt cornered by family demands, you won't believe how this plays out. Drop in the comments the wildest thing a family member has demanded of you. Let's see how many people relate. That morning, I woke to my phone vibrating with bank alerts. I grabbed it, half asleep, and opened the app. My credit limit was maxed out, $15,000 gone in overnight charges. The transactions showed payments to credit companies, all connected to my sister's debts. My stomach lurched as I scrolled. Each entry felt like another punch. How did this happen? I remembered the spare key I'd given Mom years ago, the one she still kept. She must have returned after our argument. My hands steadied as I dialed her number, anger building with every ring. She answered sounding casual, as if nothing was wrong. "Morning, Stacey. Sleep well?" I cut her off, my voice low but steady. "You took my credit card and drained my savings to pay Misty's debts." Silence stretched. Then she exhaled, not even denying it. "You were being stubborn. Misty needed help. Family steps up. You'll get over it once you see her back on track." Her tone was steeped in that familiar manipulation, like she expected gratitude. I tightened my grip on the phone, the betrayal sinking in. "That's theft, Mom. You broke into my place." She laughed it off lightly. "Don't be dramatic. It's not like I stole from a stranger. Cancel the charges if you're so upset." But the payments were already processed. I hung up before she could twist things further, my mind racing. This was no longer just about money. It was years of favoritism erupting. I needed counsel. I texted Lori Patterson, my best friend since college. We met at a downtown coffee shop with the Rocky Mountains framing the view. She listened as I walked her through the alerts and the call, her eyes widening. "That's insane, Stacey." She crossed a line. I nodded, shock giving way to determination. Lori leaned in, practical as always. "Don't react yet. Gather evidence first. You're building security footage, the transaction details. Then hit her with facts." We spent the next hour mapping out a plan. Her calm advice grounded me. By the time we headed out, I was ready to push back. Step by step. Back at my place, I opened the building's security app on my laptop. The footage from last night revealed Mom slipping in through the side door around midnight, her face partially hidden by a hood, then leaving 30 minutes later carrying what looked like a small bag. My heart raced as I saved the clip. The grainy image made it feel all too real. This was undeniable proof she'd entered without permission. Next, I sifted through my emails for the bank statements, printing out the transaction logs with timestamps that matched the video. Every charge tied directly to Misty's creditor accounts. No room for doubt. I even came across old texts from Mom over the past week, pressuring me about the debt. One read, "Misty's in trouble. You can't let her sink." Those messages spelled out her motive. With all the files neatly organized in a folder, I felt a rush of control. The initial shock from the call melted into sharp focus. Lori stayed nearby, helping me label everything carefully. "This is airtight," she said, her voice calm as she double-checked the dates. By early afternoon, we were done. My desk was a mess of papers, the laptop screen frozen on Mom's exit. That's when I decided to contact my dad, Curtis Roberts. After the divorce, he'd moved to a small town outside Denver, keeping his distance from Mom's chaos. We hadn't spoken much recently, but he knew her patterns better than anyone. His phone rang twice before he picked up, his tone warm but cautious. "Stacey, everything okay?" I laid it out quickly, skipping any emotional buildup. "Dad, Mom used my credit card to cover $15,000 of Misty's debts without asking. I have footage and records." He went silent for a moment, then exhaled slowly. "That sounds like her. Remember Grandpa's will? He set up that trust with a clause for exactly this." Any fraud against family means losing your shares. My curiosity spiked. I'd heard rumors about it years ago, but never looked into the details. Tell me more, Curtis explained patiently over the next 20 minutes. Grandpa had divided his estate evenly, but hidden in the fine print was a safeguard against financial harm to family. Based on what he observed of Mom in his later years, he protected their shares. Mom's portion was $180,000. Misty's $45,000. Both were locked until certain ages if convicted of fraud. The remainder would go to the other beneficiaries, me and my cousins. As secondary trustee, I could enforce it. File with the court once you have charges, he added. I'll email you the documents tonight. A plan started to form in my mind. Lori caught my gaze and nodded. That's your leverage. Combine it with the evidence, and they can't slip out. Later that evening, we reviewed the trust papers he sent, Lori asking sharp questions that helped refine my strategy. By nightfall, the folder felt like a weapon primed for the next move. With everything ready, I headed to the local police station in downtown Denver, Lori beside me for support. The building loomed against the mountain backdrop as we walked in and asked for the fraud unit. Soon, Detective Teresa Wong met us in a small interview room, her badge catching the fluorescent light. She listened carefully as I laid out the sequence, starting with the unauthorized charges and handing her the printed statements. This looks serious, she said, flipping through the pages, her expression shifting to professional. I showed her the security footage on my phone, zooming in on Mom's figure entering and leaving my apartment. Teresa nodded, taking notes. Clear entry without permission, timed with the transactions. That's strong. She asked about family dynamics, and I explained the favoritism, how Mom always bailed Misty out while I was left to handle things alone. Lori spoke up occasionally, confirming points from our earlier planning. By the end of our discussion, Teresa assured us she would open a case, request complete bank records, and arrange interviews. We'll reach out to your mother soon, she added, handing me a case number. As I left the station, relief and anxiety surged together, the gravity of the situation settling heavily on me. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. It was Jeremy Vaughn, my sister's fiancé, his voice tight with tension. Stacy, we need to meet in private. I agreed to a neutral location, a park near the Platte River where joggers strolled beneath a clear sky. He arrived looking disheveled, hands shoved into his pockets, and sat on the bench beside me. I didn't know about the card, he began, avoiding my gaze. Misty said you'd lend her the money for her debts. That it was family help. I pressed him, and he confessed that he'd overheard the police visiting their apartment. They had questioned her the day before, and she had confessed everything to him after it all came out. Misty had scoped out my place weeks earlier during a visit, taking note of where I kept my financial documents. She'd pressured Mom to take the card, claiming I would never consent outright. Texts between them mapped out the timing, even joking about my supposedly passive nature giving in under pressure. Jeremy showed me screenshots on his phone, the dates matching my footage. This isn't the person I thought she was, he said, his voice breaking. He had called off the engagement that morning and returned the ring, despite her pleas. She's heartbroken, but I can't marry someone capable of scheming like this. I forwarded the screenshots to Teresa immediately, bolstering the case. Jeremy gave me a nod, wished me luck, and left. I sat for a moment, the river reflecting the turbulence of my thoughts. This revelation had changed everything, recasting Misty from a passive beneficiary to an active schemer. I arrived early at the Denver courthouse for the hearing, taking a seat in the back row. The wooden benches groaned under the tension in the air. Mom and Misty entered with their attorney, Philip Dawson, both in conservative attire that couldn't conceal their strained expressions. Uncle Marvin followed, his face firm, clearly there to mediate. The judge called the case, and the prosecutor laid out the charges. Unauthorized use of a credit card resulting in $15,000 in fraudulent payments. Teresa stood nearby, presenting the evidence. We had compiled video footage, text messages, and bank logs. Mom shifted uneasily as the video played, her late-night visit undeniable. When it was time to respond, Philip stepped forward. Your Honor, my clients wish to enter guilty pleas under the agreement. The judge peered over her glasses. Proceed with allocution. Mom went first, her voice barely audible. I accessed my daughter's apartment without permission, took her credit card, and made payments on my other daughter's debts, knowing she had not approved. Her confession hung heavily in the room, her shoulders slumping as murmurs rippled through the small audience. Misty followed, eyes downcast. I assisted by identifying where she kept her cards during a prior visit. And I knew the funds were taken improperly. Her voice wavered, the courtroom's silence amplifying her discomfort. During a break, Uncle Marvin approached me in the hallway. "Stacy, this has gone far enough. Drop it for the family's sake." I shook my head, resolute. They had chosen this path. He pressed further, speaking of healing and forgiveness, but his arguments faltered against the facts. The judge dismissed his informal intervention as irrelevant. Back in session, the judge accepted the agreement. 3 years probation each, 200 hours of community service, full restitution within 30 days, and mandatory counseling. Failure on any term would result in jail. Mom and Misty nodded, the reality settling in as they signed. Philip whispered to them, his strategy crumbling. As I left the building, I caught Uncle Marvin's defeated glance. His attempt to salvage the situation had failed. That day cemented their accountability. The public record now reflected their actions. A week later, I met Curtis at his home on the outskirts of Denver. He had the trustee paperwork ready, his small house lined with books on estate law. We reviewed Grandpa's will, ensuring every detail matched the conviction. "This triggers the forfeiture," he confirmed, signing as co-trustee. I filed the notice with the court that afternoon, the clerk stamping it efficiently. The process would take roughly 60 days, but the intention was clear. Mom and Misty's shares would be redirected to me and the cousins for the financial harm caused to the family. Curtis drove me back in silence, the fracture in the family palpable. "You did what you had to," he said finally. "Back home." A few days later, Mom called, her voice edged with desperation. "Stacy, Philip says the trust is in jeopardy. We need to talk." I kept it short. The paperwork was already submitted. The clause applied. She pleaded for reconsideration, promising she'd change, but I ended the call. Misty sent texts sporadically, half-hearted apologies tangled with desperate pleas. I didn't respond, sticking to my routine. 2 months later, the administrator's letter arrived. Forfeiture approved. Mom's $180,000 and Misty's $45,000 were redistributed. My share arrived soon after. $140,000 safely deposited. The consequences hit them hard. Mom's employer ran a background check for her certification renewal and terminated her. Her criminal record left her scrambling for part-time work, her savings drained by legal fees. Misty faced harsher repercussions, creditors piling up, probation limiting her travel. Job opportunities dwindled. She applied for loans to cover restitution, but a 23% interest rate trapped her in a long cycle, payments stretching for years. Uncle Marvin reached out once, admitting the intervention had failed. They were struggling. I texted Stacy one word: consequences. Meanwhile, Lori and I met for coffee every week. Her support remained steady as I rebuilt. The money stayed untouched, a safeguard for my future. Mom and Misty's world shrank, probation check-ins and service hours filling their days, relatives drifting away. Their choices reverberated back, reshaping everything with no way to undo it. Months later, I blocked all their contacts. No more voicemails begging for understanding. No more texts spun from excuses and hardship. The silence brought clarity, a quiet space in my Denver apartment where I could focus on what came next. Lori and I started hiking near Boulder every weekend. Her energy helped me push through steep climbs and winding trails. "You've earned this freedom," she'd say, passing me a water bottle at the summit. Those hikes rebuilt my stamina, both physical and mental, turning fatigue into steady momentum. At work, I pitched a project for a remote monitoring software tool, which earned me a promotion and a raise. The extra income allowed me to upgrade my setup, adding a second screen and noise-canceling headphones for uninterrupted coding sessions. Curtis visited once a month. Our dinners were simple but meaningful. Grilled steaks and conversations about his retirement plans. He shared stories of Grandpa's business acumen, reminding me where my drive came from. "He'd be proud," Curtis said one evening, clinking glasses. I nodded, feeling it, as I invested the inheritance in a high-yield account. I built an emergency buffer and even took a short trip to the Grand Canyon, the vast landscape mirroring the possibilities in my life. Updates on Misty trickled through mutual contacts. Her call center job barely covered her expenses. Probation check-ins consumed her time. Mom downsized to a studio near the mountains, her certification loss forcing her into odd jobs like data entry. They navigated their isolation, relatives fading as the record lingered. Lori suggested therapy, not to heal old wounds, but to process the changes. Sessions helped me see that boundaries aren't walls. They're foundations. Family bonds thrive on mutual respect, not one-sided demands. When manipulation erodes trust, cutting ties preserves your core. Anyone watching should notice early signs: unmet expectations, guilt trips, endless favors. Stand firm, build your own path, and let consequences teach what words can't. True strength lies in choosing peace over obligation.